Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm thrilled to reveal my new bearded dragon enclosures. I want to state before I get into that I already have filmed a blue tongue skink enclosure tour as well with these same enclosures, well, similar. It's the same brand, but it's not the exact same enclosure. I'll get into that in a minute. But if you're interested in that, make sure you check that out. I also ask that you check the description down below because I'm going to include timestamps so you can jump around the video. If you're only interested in hearing what I have to say about Zen Habitats enclosures, then you can click on that part of the video. If you just want to see what the enclosure looks like, you can click on that part of the video. I just want the video to be as accessible as possible because I know some people might only be interested in some parts. I'd also like to say that this video is not sponsored by Zen Habitats. I did purchase these enclosures and the stands out of my own money. I will say, however, I do have an affiliate link. So I was given the affiliate link after I shared the enclosures on social media, and if you are interested in buying a Zen Habitats enclosure and you use my link down below, I will receive a small commission, so I thank you in advance if that's the route you choose to take. But without further ado, let's go ahead and show off these enclosures. So first off, I have two bearded dragons, Franklin and Nova. I'm going to show off Nova's enclosure first, and then I will transition into Franklin's. They have the exact same setup, so I'm just going to flip in between them to show off the enclosures and to display what I'm using in them. These enclosures are 48 by 24 by 24 enclosures from Zen Habitats. They are made out of wood. They are not the PVC ones. The PVC ones are used for more high humidity species. So first and foremost, let's talk about the bottom of the enclosure where you see tile and you see substrate. So I did include a section of tile. It's about 50% tile, 50% substrate. The tile is the tile I had been using before. It's just tile that I got from Home Depot. Has a little bit of a rough surface that their nails can scratch onto. I also feed them on their tile because that's what they're used to doing, and it also prevents, the risk of impaction, which we will talk about in a minute. But I do appreciate having tile there and then substrate in the back and on a little bit of the side. The substrate is a little bit more complicated than just the tile because, tile is easy, you just lay tile down. But the substrate you choose for a bearded dragon has to be fine, like it has to be super fine and not like chunky. And it also has to be arid, so it can't be something that's meant for a tropical species. In the United States, the market for reptile substrate is like not great. I won't lie, it's just not great. I would have loved to have tried Arcadia's substrates, but unfortunately, I have no access to them at this time. If I do in the future, I will be trying them out. But for the time being, I had to make my own substrate, which took a whole day and a half. And let me tell you, it was a long, painstaking process. And it gave me a cramp in my thigh that I had for like 3 days because I was sitting in a weird position sifting substrate for so long. But anyways, the substrate is a combination of organic topsoil and washed play sand. Now I know you hear the word sand and you are probably immediately triggered, but just hear me out for a second. I have seen a lot of people make the switch from tile to substrate, and I have seen sometimes that the substrate used is EcoWorth, and that I think is not a great option. And then I've seen some people use just topsoil, which I think is great, but also I think it needs to have something else to it as well. And then I've seen people use the BioDude substrate. I've seen people use all kinds of stuff. I've also seen people use the dangerous stuff like calcium sand, crushed walnut shell, all the stuff that you're supposed to avoid, right? So let me just say unequivocally, I did my research about substrate and what substrate would be best for my bearded dragons before ever adding it to the enclosure. I'm sure if you follow me long enough by now that you know that I would never make a move that would endanger them. But I had to weigh the risks and the benefits, the risk of impaction versus the benefit of offering the enrichment of digging. And so I decided to go with letting them have digging enrichment and a more naturalistic enclosure because the risk of impaction is fairly low when husbandry is correct and when the proper substrate has been chosen. I did order some of the BioDude's Terra Sahara because that is one of the few substrates I have seen people use for bearded dragons that is made for arid species. And I've got to say, I wasn't really thrilled. So the reason I didn't like Terra Sahara was because it felt like a lot of wood pulp in comparison to soil. Like when you look at organic topsoil, it's like a rich, thick soil. Like it's fine, it's soft, it feels like soil, right? When you look at sand, you can tell immediately that it's sand. When I looked at this substrate, I didn't see soil. I saw like tiny little wood fibers. And I also found large rocks, like randomly thrown about the bag. I found these large rocks. Some of them were like really sharp. Some of them were like the size of my thumb. Like just huge random rocks, and I didn't understand why that's not advertised. The one thing I wish that I would see on substrates made for reptiles is a breakdown of what is in each bag. I never see that on substrates, and it's kind of annoying because I want to know what I'm putting in my enclosure, right? I did sift through all of Terra Sahara to get all the rocks out, to get any weird wood pulpy bits out, and I was left with a very fine soil. So I managed to just separate the soil from the bits that I didn't want, and then I tossed those out. Then I mixed that with organic topsoil that was already baked and sifted, and I mixed that with play sand that was already sifted. So what I got at the end was an extremely fine soil, and then I moistened that a little bit and put it in the enclosure. Now it is a couple inches deep at some portions, and then in the back corners it's a little bit deeper. Where it meets the tile, it's thinnest, so that I could, you know, build it up in the sides and in the background. I did put the substrate barrier in there, even though there's only a small section of substrate off to the side, because I think the substrate barrier is helpful not only in keeping the substrate, you know, from falling out of the doors, but it also keeps my bearded dragons from scratching the doors, which I've heard is a problem people have had with the acrylic doors. They get scratched easily, so I don't have that problem if I leave that substrate barrier there. They just scratch up the substrate barrier. So far, I have noticed absolutely zero problems with the substrate. Franklin has pooped on his tile, very fortunately. Nova pooped on her tile, but she also pooped in her substrate once, which was kind of annoying. I was hoping that they wouldn't poop in the substrate, but alas, she did. I have noticed Nova digging. She has been quite active in her enclosure ever since moving her. She did engage with the substrate. Franklin, however, doesn't seem to care about it. I kind of expected that from him. So, Franklin was indeed digging. Yeah, I can amend my previous statement. He certainly has been digging. The substrate isn't bioactive, and the reason for this is that when it comes to arid bioactives, one, there's not that much research out there, and two, I don't know that many people who have had long-term success with arid bioactives. I believe it's Australian Reptiles on Instagram, but they did a post a while back about bioactive arid substrates and how it's not actually effective. Like, the cleanup crew isn't able to keep up with the waste that a bearded dragon puts out. So I will include that down below. But just know that, like, if there was a way to make it bioactive long-term successfully, that's what I would have done. And I'm still continuing to do research on that topic, and I'm still continuing to see what other people do. And so if I make the change one day, I will let you know. But right now, it is just loose substrate. So it is just a naturalistic enclosure. It is not a bioactive enclosure. There are no live plants. The succulents that you see in the enclosure are fake plants and are pretty much just there for decoration and enrichment. In addition to the succulents, you will also see some other fake plants in the enclosure, and I will include links to them down below so you can know which ones I got where. Each enclosure also features a cold hide and a warm hide. The warm hide is on tile and the cool hide is in the substrate. That is actually where the substrate is the deepest. Both enclosures also have 3 large pieces of wood that offer climbing and enrichment, things like that. They also have a green hammock, which probably takes away from the naturalistic aspect of it, but I couldn't part Franklin from his hammock. He does love hammocks. Now let's talk about lighting. So prior to these enclosures, I used 100 watt mega ray mercury vapor bulbs from Reptile UV, and I never had any problems using those lights, but I thought, why not try something new and see if I have more success? Because I could always go back to the way I was doing it before if it didn't work out, but it's always good to try something new because you could see more benefits by trying something new. So in my bearded dragon enclosures, they have a linear UVB that is a T5HO 12% bulb from Arcadia. They both have 100 watt halogen bulbs from Arcadia in lamps that have dimmers. The lamps are placed inside the enclosure because UVB actually is decreased when it's passed through mesh, so the lamp has been placed inside the enclosure, and the heat lamp was also placed in the enclosure because when it was outside the enclosure I actually wasn't getting the best heat readings, and also I placed it inside the enclosure for a reason that I will discuss a little bit later in regards to the lid of the enclosure. So now let's talk about the Zen Habitats enclosures. So for the beardies, I ordered the wood enclosures. Now for my blue tongue skink, I talked about ordering the PVC enclosure. The wood ones are for arid species and the PVC one is for more humid species. And so because the blue tongue skink has a lot more substrate that has to retain a little bit more humidity, that is why we chose the PVC one. But for the beardies, the wood ones have worked fine. So I ordered mine. Like I said, I paid for them outright. I did not receive a discount or a sponsorship or anything like that. I do have the affiliate link that I mentioned earlier, but aside from that, everything was done like as a consumer. I purchased them myself. So I purchased them months ago, and there is a little bit of a backlog, but it's not nearly as bad as you would experience with other enclosures. So like for a long time, for months, I looked at what enclosures I'd like to buy. In the reptile market in the United States, your options are always pretty much like a black or a white PVC enclosure, or you build one yourself made out of like wood or melamine. Those are pretty much your only options. I mean, you can go with a glass aquarium, but a lot of times they're just not large enough. And also, I like front opening doors, and glass enclosures don't offer that unless you also order like an acrylic door to put on the front. And then at that point, it's just like, it's a lot of work. One benefit that Zen Habitats had over the other companies that I was looking at is that they weren't simply black or white or glass. Like, they had that bamboo printed PVC siding and backing, which I really liked because it was like a natural color. And so without having to build like a DIY background, your only option would be to have a black or a white PVC or glass. So I thought it was really cool that like they gave us a different option. Now, it had fast shipping and free shipping, which I greatly appreciate. And it arrived like, I'd say like a month or two after I ordered it. But like I said, there was a backlog because they do get a lot of orders. That is normal. Like when it comes to getting enclosures, I know some companies you wait up to 6 months before you get the enclosure. So this is not really bad in comparison. So I waited the time and I got my blue tongue skink and my 2 bearded dragon enclosures the same day, which was awesome. The guy that came off the truck told me about how he got stung in the butt by a scorpion, and I was like, thank you for the details. So I don't know why I'm including that, but I am. So I put all the boxes aside in my garage, and then I had to wait another month or two because we had to renovate the room that the bearded dragons and the blue tongue skink were going in. So I had to wait so long to finally put them together. So then the day came to put them together, and I assembled all 3 in one day, and they're very easy to assemble, very easy. I could do it all by myself with the exception of like 2 instances where I needed Aaron's help. So if I could do it all by myself, so could you. So all you need really is what comes in the box and a rubber mallet. You definitely need a rubber mallet. Make sure you have a rubber mallet. I can't say rubber mallet enough. You need it, okay? So make sure you have it. I fortunately did because I have a lot of tools because I've built enclosures over the years. So I was like, yes, let me go grab my rubber mallet. So I brought it downstairs and I assembled it. Now, the room was empty because I was renovating it. Didn't have carpet, like we just put like a linoleum down for the time being. And then like, there's no furniture in the room, so the banging echoed off the walls. And this is probably not something you'll experience because your house probably will have a bit more muffling, but oh my god, it was so loud trying to get these pieces together with a rubber mallet while there's nothing in the room because all the sounds just like echoed and reverberated back into my ears. And I tell you what, that was my second least favorite part. My first least favorite part was peeling the backing off of the doors and like the substrate shields. Oh my god, I don't know why I couldn't peel it off in one piece, probably because I'm challenged, but every time I would try to peel it, I would only get like this much at a time, so I was just like, for like an hour and a half, just peeling it. Oh, it was dreadful. Meanwhile, I had Aaron do his, and he got it off in one piece in 15 minutes. Why? Like, what's wrong with me? So anyways, that was the only annoying part, was the banging and the having to peel off the paper, but you'll probably have a better experience with both of those than I did. So then once they were assembled, I also assembled a stand, and then we put it on top of the stand. They give you this like little 3M like glue strips, and they're strong, and I know this because I set the enclosure down crooked on the stand and I couldn't get it back off. So take this from me, do not be impatient with setting the enclosure on the stand, because once it's on there, I mean, it's on there. Like, you can't peel it back off easy. We did choose to have a stand because we wanted to keep them off the floor for better insulation, and also because it looks nicer. Also because we could store everything underneath, and those little sliding doors give us access to like the light timers, the food, anything like that that we store underneath of the enclosures. So it's nice. I like having it set up the way it is. there is one more thing I need to talk about, and that is the mesh top. So there was some discussion held on Twitter about the galvanized steel mesh tops and how galvanized steel actually isn't super safe for animals at super high temperatures or in really like strong humidity. Now, the reason I only want to mention this is so that I'm not being irresponsible with my platform. I'm still using these for my animals, and the reason that is because the galvanized steel is only problematic when it reaches temperatures of over 400 degrees Fahrenheit, which that is obviously going to do more damage to your reptile immediately than the leaching of the galvanized steel would, because 400 degrees would roast your reptile. So first of all. Second of all, the other concern is that like in high humidity, like water droplets would leach the galvanized steel, or it's zinc actually being leached from the galvanized steel anyways, into like the enclosure. And there are actually like farm animals that have galvanized steel bowls and troughs that drink out of them all the time. So, I mean, there's not a whole lot of research on this topic. Like when I Googled it, when I found that out, I had literally found it out the day after I assembled the enclosures. So I was like, perfect, love that for me, that I didn't see that and think about that, which is my bad. Because the parameters are so high for this to be a problem, I'm really not worried about it. I'm keeping arid species and like not super humid species in these enclosures. I mean, the blue-tongued skink obviously has more humidity, but that's going to be in the substrate, not on the roof of the enclosure. So I feel confident using these enclosures, and I really do like them. I just wanted to be responsible in addressing that galvanized steel. Some people have said that it's a concern. That said, it's going to be up to you to make the choice. I think it's decently affordable for what it is, considering how expensive reptile enclosures can be in the United States. Again, I can only speak for the United States because I know that animal enclosures might be more readily available in other places. But because of the free shipping, the relatively inexpensive cost, the ease of putting it together, the way that it looks, like it's not black or white PVC, it's not glass. It has like those, you know, bamboo printed sides and backing. I really like it. I think that it was easy to put together. I think that it looks nice. I think it's really accessible. That's the thing I think is best about it, is that it's accessible. So like when you see someone going to a pet store, their options for enclosures are like an Exoterra or a glass enclosure of some kind. That's pretty much it, right? That's what you get. And a lot of times they're undersized too. So if there's someone who's interested in reptiles, who just wants something that's, you know, like sizable enough, eye appealing, easy to put together, I honestly think this is probably one of the best options on the market right now, because the only other options are going to be really expensive, really long wait time, or they have that simple like black and white PVC type of thing, which is fine. All of my leopard gecko enclosures are going to be black and not have like bamboo siding or whatever. But I think that given the option, it's nice to have that, you know, especially when you aren't building a DIY background. Like for a bearded dragon or a blue-tongued skink, they might damage a DIY background. So it's nice to have the option to have the enclosure that has a nice background already without having to just look like at plain black or glass or something like that. I think this would be great if they were selling it in pet stores, because it would be an accessible option for people who are looking for something like this to give to a bearded dragon. I think it's good to advertise that like bearded dragons need a lot more space than they're given, because a lot of places that sell animal enclosures, they advertise a 40-gallon for a bearded dragon, whereas Zen Habitats says no, this 4x2x2 is the size that's appropriate for a bearded dragon, right? And they even have it so that you can build onto the enclosures to make them bigger. So like you can take a 4x2x2 and add an extension with a 2x2x2 and make a 6x2x2. So it's great. Like I think it's really accessible, and I think that for people who don't want to build their own or who can't build their own, this is a really good option. Soon I will be posting a video of my beardies eating in their new enclosure, and I'll also post a few clips of them just exploring the enclosure as well. And I wanted to keep that separate from this video just so that if when I post those there's any questions about my husbandry, I can just direct them to this video. So sorry if you expected to see like a lot of exploring in this video or a lot of really fun beardy behaviors. I promise that is coming. It's just going to be in a different video, which if you'd like to see it, you can subscribe because it'll be out soon. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, leave a comment, you can subscribe, all the good stuff. If you have anything you want to ask, please please don't hesitate to ask. I am here to answer questions, any questions you may have. With that said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!